So this is my 1975 Volkswagen Brasilia, and today the goal is just going to be to really get it up and running a little bit. I've had the car for about 9 months, but honestly I haven't been able to spend much time on it the past 6 or 7 months. So today I want to do a couple basic things and just see if I can get it to turn over and maybe drive back and forth a little bit. I'll plan to do another video doing an overview of the car. It is pretty unusual here in the United States, at least. A lot of people confuse it for a Rabbit or an old Golf maybe. Really only people from Brazil will recognize it. Mechanically speaking though, it is pretty similar to the old Beetles, Karmann Ghias, buses, things. It's a 1600cc engine, rear mounted, so fortunately resource wise I can kind of troubleshoot and do research based on the other similar Volkswagens. So first thing first, I'm going to get a charger hooked up just so I can get that battery charged while I start to do some other stuff on the car. And here is life hack number one, at least for this video. I'm using a bike pump just to get the air in the tires up to 20 to 30 psi. Again, been sitting a little while. Really for today I just want to be able to, if I get it started, roll it back and forth. So flat tires are not conducive to that, so I'm doing a little bit of elbow grease just to get them pumped up a bit. And this is probably as good a time as any to mention the poor video quality. If you're wondering, yes, I did shoot this on a toaster. Not quite, but I shot it on a really old camera. Didn't really realize how poor the video quality was until after I recorded anything. So maybe we'll improve that in the future. And with the tires pumped up, I'll just block a wheel quickly and we'll get on to the parts. So, old Volkswagen hasn't been touched in months. First thing to do would be an oil change. I went with a new filter screen, pretty easy to find. And then obviously classic Volkswagen forums filled with lots of opinions. I went with a oil type and weight that would seem to work for the setup and climate that I have. And for tools, nothing too crazy. A little plastic pry bar scraper to help get gaskets off and take the oil plate off. 10 millimeter socket, something with low torque that'll let you get that off as well. And then something shown before to collect the oil in, and obviously some wipes and things to help clean along the way. The other thing I'm not sure you'll need, but from what I saw online would definitely help, at least in the Beetles and Karmann Ghias oil changes, to have a floor jack and maybe some jack stands. If you jack up the rear of the car, I think it helps with the oil draining process. So again, that's what I saw and that's what I did for my oil change. So with the rear on jack stands, we can get the jack out of the way and start getting ready to get the old oil out of there. So first sliding the oil drain pan under the car, nothing fancy there. But then I got into kind of what is the first kind of scary step in this process. It's getting those 6 nuts off the oil drain plate. There's a lot of stuff online about these breaking, shearing. Really a big headache that I was scared to deal with, especially with a lot of this service being neglected. So yeah, jumping into it, but being a little bit careful. And yeah, I was fortunate. They all came off, it was a little bit dicey in terms of how much pressure applying to, again, a low torque wrench, a 1/4 inch drive. But I was able to get them off going slowly in a star pattern, and then this is just me finishing up, taking them off by hand. What was less smooth was me trying to get this plate off, which was absolutely welded on there. So you can see me going around with this hard plastic kind of pry bar. I'm just going really slowly, applying a little bit of pressure kind of all the way around, but it really did not want to budge. And finally we break it loose. That's the good news. The bad news, as you see, is this oil is as black as ink right now. So good that we're doing an oil change, but yeah, you can definitely see that it's been sitting there for a long time. So after a little bit, the draining slows to a drip, so I get back in there with the pry bar. I make kind of my first little mistake here. It's so firm on there that when it does come loose, it kind of flies and lands in the old oil. Not the end of the world, but definitely a little extra cleaning on my end. And real quick, here's where you first see that the oil on the back of that plate is like sludge. Not good to see, but again, happy that we're taking care of it. So this is where I try and fail to get the gasket off. That's again seemingly welded to the car. I'm trying with the little plastic pry bar, but this is my first kind of going back into the shop, getting a different tool to get that thing off. And what I end up using here is really just a paint scraper. Some thin piece of metal that I can work all the way around. Again, that thing was very, very stuck, but at least with the metal scraper I could get in between the gasket and the bottom of the engine. And again, just very slowly work my way all the way around. And at long last, here comes the gasket and the oil screen filter. They're completely stuck together, but they are out. So here they are laid out. There's the screen, the cap, the nuts, and the gaskets from the car. Obviously we have a new screen, new gaskets, but just showing the condition that they're in, it's pretty gnarly. And if you look at the cap, it's really that backside is completely just caked in a sludge from the old oil. So we'll take those in, we'll have it cleaned off, and then we'll put that cap and nuts back on with the new gasket and screen. So you can see here, things cleaned up pretty nicely, just using some water and a little bit of light degreaser. But there is a little bit of hard residue around where that gasket was. So I'm going to go back in just again with a kind of plastic scraper and try to take a little bit more of that off before we put the new parts back in. And with that done, we have smooth, clean surfaces and new parts. So we have everything we need now to put oil back in the car. A couple of interesting notes on the new parts. Obviously the screen, just a little interesting because I haven't worked on old Volkswagens much. So to see that was pretty new. But also the gaskets. They're basically pieces of cardboard, which again I bought a Karmann recommended kit, so I don't think it's something unusual, but something I hadn't seen. And then lastly, it came with these little washers. No washers came off the car, and I also didn't really have the space with the gaskets to put washers back on. So I skipped adding those, but again, just interesting to see some of the differences. So back under the car, just a little last cleaning of surfaces, wiping and scraping, but nothing too fancy before we go in with the new stuff. And then yeah, here I come back in with gasket, screen, gasket, plate, and then trying to get those nuts on finger tight. Like I said, with the non-compressed gasket, it was actually pretty hard to even have enough threads poking through to get any of the nuts on, but even to get just two of them on to get it started, a little bit of effort, but eventually got them on there so I could get it started. And kind of hard to see in the video, but my second slip up was I did also drop a nut into that old oil because they were so hard to get on there. But I fished it out, cleaned it off, and was able to get all 6 of those nuts on finger tight and ready for wrenching. And with my fear of shearing one of these nuts, I very slowly went around in a star pattern and eventually got them all tightened to a place that I was comfortable with. Again, using kind of a short leverage wrench, not to over tighten them, but got there and was really happy with how it looked. Definitely felt good having that new cap and new hardware on. Now we're back topside, ready to fill up with new oil. You can see where the dipstick is, pretty low down here. Really can't tell much from it. Even before I did the oil change, was hard to get a reading. But we'll get a baseline and then start filling up. So the engine calls for about 2.5 quarts. I was probably expecting to put in a little less with the old oil being so kind of thick that it would kind of a little bit would remain. I ended up putting about 2 and then taking a measurement and topping it off just a little bit more from there before lowering the car back down. Here we go, getting the jack stands removed, jacking the car up. Nothing fancy, but in my opinion, one of the most satisfying feelings is getting a car back on the ground. So just capturing that here. And yeah, here we go, taking off the charging cables, getting ready to try to start this car for the first time in really over a half year. A little nervous at this point, but excited to see how it goes. So after a couple attempts, I'm pretty sure it's not going anywhere. I come to the realization though that it's been sitting for quite a while. Probably new gas wouldn't hurt. So I make a quick trip to run down to the gas station. And another pretty popular topic on classic Volkswagen forums, what type of gas to use. I went with standard 87 octane pump gas based on what people had posted. Feel free to roast me, but again, just trying to get this thing running, and that is what I had immediately available. So here we are, attempt number 2 with gas. And here I am trying to get some fuel running through the pump. Not really seeing any results, trying to do a little bit of troubleshooting, checking for leaks, things like that, but really not feeling too great, and not really sure what the issue might be right now. So moving in the car just to show what's happening. I think we're okay on oil. I think my concern here is that that generator light is staying lit. So this leads me basically to take a break, go inside, do some reading, but again, not sure what the next step would be. So after a little research and thinking about what I was seeing and hearing, I don't actually think that light is an issue. I decided to go out and give it another shot, and believe it or not, we have signs of life on the third try. So it runs a little rough and it does end up dying, but that is definitely a step in the right direction. It gets me really excited, gets me ready to maybe even do my happy dance. Now before starting again, I decided to roll the car out of the garage just for the sake of all the fumes. It is a like 95-degree day here, so I'm not too happy about that, but if it means I can actually get this thing running and maybe rolling back and forth, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And here it is outside, starting right back up again. It's awesome, getting me really excited, so I'm going to put it into gear and I'll just let the tape play a little bit as I rock it back and forth. So yeah, I'm clapping, I'm smiling. That's about as much as I can muster right now after all these hours in the heat, but super excited to have this thing out of the garage on its own power. So yeah, that's a wrap. Third time was the charm. Obviously things like a little bit of gas helped along the way. But really excited for this step and looking forward to more work and more videos on the car. I'll plan to do some just general coverage too. I think the Brasilia is pretty unique here in the US, but looking forward to more videos and more improvements on the car.